So currently, these tabs are not clickable. I can't do anything with them, and that is a problem that we need to solve. So let me scroll down to the markup. Now, our goal here is to do progressive enhancement, so I want to leave this when JavaScript is not active in as natural and useful a state as possible. So one way to make these tabs clickable would be to add links around them, but then I just have some links here that were JavaScript not available would be basically meaningless. So instead, what I'm going to do is down here in the code, I'm going to add event listeners to these headers. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways you could do this. We're going to do a way that's pretty explicit and somewhat inefficient first, so you can see what's happening, and then we're going to clean it up a little. So what I'm going to do first is grab each of these headers so that I can add things to them. So I'm going to use my good friend document.getElementById, and then I want to get the ID of each of these tabs. So the tab header is what I want to make clickable, and each one has an ID that looks like this. So I'm going to copy that, scroll back down, and there we go. So now I'll have this, and I want to get each of these, and I need to give it a name. So there is that, and I'm going to do one of these for each of those headers. 1, 2, and 3. All right. So now that I have these tabs and I can do things with them without having to write all this out every time, I'm going to create event listeners for each one. So what we're looking for is the click event, and then I'm going to add a function that will actually do something when I click these things. So I'm going to call it activate tab, because that's what I want to happen. I'm going to use a named function in this case because I'm going to repeat myself, and using an anonymous function here would mean I'd have to repeat the function every time. Using a named function means that I can repeat it and just pass in that variable. So let's change these, and let's create the function activate tab. This being an event listener, I can play with an event parameter, so I'll add this in here just in case I need it. And now I'm just going to log a message to the console so that I know that I heard a click. Okay, save this, switch over to the browser and reload, open my console. Yep, and we heard a click. Good. Okay, so we have an event listener on each one of these, and it took a few lines of code to get there. Let's do this a little bit differently. Along with the IDs on these tabs, I have a class for each one. So I'm using tab header and then an ID. So instead of doing this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I could do this as a loop instead. So let's try this differently. Let's get all of the tab headers at once. And we can do that just like we can select a single element by ID. I can also get a bunch of elements using their class. So the method that I can use to get those is document.getElements, because I'm grabbing more than one, by class name. And then I need to pass in the name of that class, which is just tab header. And I'm going to call this variable name tab headers. Okay, so now that I have all of these, I should see what this looks like. So let me switch back over to the browser and show you what this gives me. It gives me an array with each of those elements. And one of the best things that we can do with an array is use a for loop to do something to each one of them. And so what I want to do is add an event listener, the same event listener, to each one. And just to be clear here, I'm using the same function on each of these because we just want to keep things neat. You'll see, of course, that we want to activate a different tab every time one of these is clicked, but we can do that in a single function. So going back, I'm going to loop over these and add the same event listener to each one. So going to use our friend the for loop here, starting at 0 and going until we reach the length of this tab headers array, stepping by 1 every time. And now I'm going to add an event listener to each tab header in turn, using its index in the array. I'm just going to use the same thing as before, like this. So I'm going to surround my previous code in a multi-line comment. So now this will not execute. And the way this works is a slash followed by an asterisk immediately. If you put a space in there, it doesn't work. And then to end it, an asterisk followed by a slash. And having done this, my editor colors it in this light gray, and I can see that it's something that's not going to execute anymore. So let me reload, keeping my console open. And there we go. I heard a click. So now I have a function that will react every time one of these tabs is clicked. Of course, that doesn't buy me much yet, but it does make me ready to actually take some meaningful action later.